Welcome to the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 050.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Welcome back to the Veterinary Project Podcast. You are joined by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light on episode 50 of the Veterinary Project Podcast, which is super exciting. Mike, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well, Jonathan. Yeah, episode 50. I noticed that when we were setting up the recording. That's sweet. I mean, we're a little over a year, so I was happy to get to that milestone.
Look at what we've done in the last year. Look at the guests we've been able to bring onto the podcast to share about the awesomeness, the difficulties that is veterinary medicine. Really excited about it. As compared to what we've done in the past, we're not doing a review. We have a guest on today. She's going to be fantastic. But before we get into that, what's new in your world?
Well, I'm prepping to come out to Calgary, Jonathan. I have my ball hockey tournament. So it's mostly rec, but for 1 week a year, it's competitive. So it's our national tournament, and it just happens to be in Calgary. So I'll be coming your way and hopefully checking out your new vet clinic.
Like, this is kind of a big deal. I got to get your signature. You're on the senior men's ball hockey Canada team. I think.
No.
Oh, whoa. Let's drop it down. Sorry, Saskatchewan.
I'm on the Saskatchewan team. Let's be real here.
But this is still good. This is a big deal. You are on the equivalent of the state senior national, state team. This is a big deal for 1 week.
For 1 week. Actually, this tournament, there is implications. If we can win this tournament, there is a shot or a spot available to go to Worlds, which would be in the Czech Republic, I believe, in 2022. So that's pretty cool. So I've been putting in a lot of work training-wise for it to try and have a good showing.
Who knew that there was a world championship for ball hockey? Now every listener knows that. This is great.
Know. Okay, enough about me. So when I come out there and I come check out your vet clinic, how did everything go? How did opening day go?
You know what? We have done fantastic. And I'm not just saying that for shits and giggles to make it so that it sounds all good. We have done really well. I am so happy with, first and foremost, the team, as well as our contractors that have made this happen. We pushed hard over the last 3 weeks to get everything going. We finally got our occupancy and our last inspections done on Tuesday. We saw animals starting that afternoon. We had a full schedule already yesterday for a single doctor that was in. We've got our first dental today. And again, full schedule going on. I think we already have 5 or 6 appointments booked for the weekend. We're actually trying to limit that amount just because we're all dealing with a new practice management software, which is taking some getting used to, in EasyVet, which we think will be really great in the end. Our in-house lab work is new to everybody, and just figuring out the workflows. So we're in full collaboration mode. There is a lot of decisions to make on a day-to-day basis. I hit my wall on Tuesday. I definitely felt that. Got a great, 9-hour sleep yesterday. So I'm feeling rejuvenated today, and we're going to keep going, but definitely a team effort. This is not any single individual. We've had some great feedback for the design and the feel of the clinic. So we're going after a different aesthetic, which won't be for everybody. And frankly, I don't care. And I'm really happy with the feedback and reviews from what we're hearing in the community. Super cool.
Awesome. Well, good for you, man. I'm excited. I can't wait to come check it out.
We're pretty proud of it at this point. Lots of work to do. But enough about us. We have Becky Taylor on today. And Becky is a colleague of mine. We've worked together over the past 1.5 years together within Mosaic Veterinary Partners. Becky is a self-professed communication nerd, and we have a lot of fun today. So before we go into a little bit of a cliffhanger for you, which involves throat punches, what? What's our quick tip today, Mike?
Okay, so our quick tip today, I'm totally leaning on Becky for this one because I was taking so many notes during our conversation. And one of the things that jumped out to me is Becky appears to be a master of reframing. And so you'll hear in our conversation, throughout the conversation, she talked about being disorganized and then reframe that to being like, no, I'm creative. She talked about failing and being like, no, that's an opportunity to learn. And she talked about the word utilize and reframe that into, no, I would prefer the word mobilize. And so you'll have to check out the whole episode to see where each of those pieces pop up. But the quick tip is thinking about how you can reframe situations. And you'll see that with Becky. She's a master at it. That just sort of jumped out at me. I was like, wow, she is great at this. So that's today's quick tip, is looking at reframing your semantics and your situations.
It's a great quick tip, Mike, and I'm going to use that myself. I'm going to think about that even in today's presence. So very briefly, we're going to move into Becky's bio and then go into the conversation. There is a lot of learning to be done today around communication tips, around the specifics to her RVT career and where she sees RVTs mobilizing in the future to the benefit of the entire veterinary community. Becky herself, she's been a dedicated career RVT for over 25 years. In that time, she's worked in mixed animal practice, in education, and in corporate veterinary medicine. She's participated in hundreds of CE opportunities, sat on national and provincial boards, and considers herself a lifelong learner. A pinnacle of this learning was in 2016 when Becky completed a Master of Arts in Professional Communication through Royal Roads University. Her final project was authoring a paper on the role of RVTs with clients and resulted in the creation of a communication model for RVTs. Currently, she has 3 professional roles. Her full-time gig is as co-founder of BS Communication Strategies, where she provides communication coaching to individuals, companies, and teams in a practical skills-based way. She has a tiny co-founder in the tele-triage company AnimalHealth Link, and in addition to those roles, she contracts to and supports Mosaic Veterinary Partners in the management and building of their veterinary practice teams. These endeavors fuel her communication nerdiness and her entrepreneurial spirit. She shares her life with her husband Colin and their 2 children, Nikki and Maddie, as well as many fur friends. Her passion outside of family and work is in her horses, and she can be found spending lots of her free time developing her skills in horsemanship, as well as being with her herd of 4. She has recently partnered with a friend to create another cool side business, the Horsewomen's Club. Without further ado, Becky Taylor in a wide-ranging discussion around communication, veterinary RVTs, and what we can all do to be more joyful in this profession. And welcome back to the Veterinary Project podcast. We are joined this morning by none other than Becky Taylor. Becky, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast with Mike and I this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here, actually. I've been following you guys and I really like what you're doing. So quite an honor to be asked, and I'm excited.
Look at that. It's an honor already. And I joke about that just because Becky and I work on a day-to-day basis together. We are going to get into some great detail today. And there's without a doubt, we will be able to fulfill and entertain our podcast listeners today, without a doubt. So for those who don't know Becky Taylor, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's got you to this point in your career, Becky?
Sure. So I started out, I graduated from the Fairview program in 1993. So I'm heading for the 30-year marker here in a couple of years. And I started out in mixed animal practice. I had one dream only, and that was to work with large animals and do veterinary medicine. That was keen. I knew that from teenager, volunteered in a mixed animal practice, chose Fairview for that reason. And I spent a great first 7 years working in a multi-doctor mixed animal practice in Morinville and Onaway. So I had a really great start in the profession, where even in that era, we were utilized at a pretty high level, and we're enjoying our work and worked with some great veterinarians. So 7 years into that, there was an opportunity at Olds College to be an instructional assistant. And I was very, very inspired by my instructional staff at Fairview. There were some very amazing, beautiful people that I got to know there. And I really had a desire to do what they did. So I started in Olds College in 99 and worked there for almost 19 years. And that was honestly one of the best parts of my career. I taught in the HT program. I directed that program for almost 10 years and helped develop the receptionist program, the tech assistant program, and the hospital managers program. We had a vision to kind of provide education and training for every level of support staff for the veterinarians. Through that time, I also got to work with University of Calgary in the vet program and got to know the instructors there. So fast forward through that 19 years, which was amazing. And part of that journey was I had an opportunity that was supported by Olds College through an amazing faculty program that they have there, where I was able to pursue a degree in professional communication. So 2014 to 2016, I did a Master of Arts in Professional Communication through Royal Roads University while working full-time and having kids at home. You know, I'm never going to do that again, to be very clear. That will not happen again. But in reflection, I'm so grateful that I did, because it's opened a lot of doors for me. And then to 2018, where I started with Mosaic Veterinary Partners, and that's, of course, where I got to work with Jonathan, and went back into mixed animal practice, which felt to me like the very roots of where I came from. And funnily enough, the first practice that Mosaic had bought was Fairview, which is where I did many hours in my program, taking the AHT program. I spent many hours in the scour ward and doing cesareans at 3 a.m. with the veterinarians there. So felt like old home to me. And then through all that, I've always had an avid interest in communication. And I think it was in 2004, there was a fax, you know, remember when we used to get faxes, and came to the college, and it was a whole conference on communication in veterinary medicine. It was called the International Conference for Communication in Veterinary Medicine, ICCVM, and it was held in Banff. And I couldn't believe that there was a whole entire conference dedicated to communication, which has always been a very nerdy place for me. So went there, my eyes were wide open. That's where I first met literature in communication, some of the amazing mentors, Dr. Cindy Adams, Dr. Jason Coe, Dr. Jane Shaw. There's some real pioneers in communication in vet medicine. Got very involved in that. And then to my current business right now, which is BS Communication Strategies, where I'm coaching and teaching and just being super nerdy about communication whenever I can. So that's the nutshell. It's a long, you know, I'm a vintage RVT is how I'd like to be referred to, please. Vintage.
So I'm taking notes. And again, we talk on a daily basis, and I'm going, we have a lot to unpack in that journey. How do you, and maybe this is intrinsic to yourself as a personality, go from 7 years in mixed animal, a quality career, it sounds like, at the practice that you were practicing in,
it was,
to the next step and the next step and the next step? Because there's a lot of people out there right now that would love to have the fulfilling career that you are still in the middle of, have already had. How do you make that happen?
I think that it's because I'm insatiably, like, undeniably curious about everything around me. So I don't think I do anything half-ass. In that time also, through that career, I need to add that I volunteered for probably a 16-year span on the ABVTA, which used to be the Triple HT. That was within my first year of practice. I was already on their continuing education committee because the people that I worked with were so passionate about it. So I did that, and even in that realm, I was the first RVT to sit on the ABVMA Council, which was very startling at the time and, you know, almost unheard of, but was extremely well supported by the ABVMA and the ABVT at that time. So I just feel like there's so much to learn and so much to do, and I like to dive in. Some people would say I'm a bit chaotic and disorganized. I prefer to say that I'm, like, you know, artistically creative and interesting and curious, but it depends on which lens you're looking through. So I just think I'm very interested in everything. And without a doubt, the finest, best quality people I have met to date have been in the veterinary profession. So that, to me, those people that I've met along the way that I still know and still care about and cherish, that probably has been the greatest inspiration. I'm kind of a people person, so people really inspire me. And some of the folks that I've met, as you guys know, are like, you just like, where are you from? How is it that you're so interesting and amazing? That's I think what kind of jazzes me the most.
where have you found your determination to make the steps? As an example, being the first tech on the ABVMA council with however many other veterinarians, 11 or 12 veterinarians on there.
Yeah.
That's not simple. That's not easy. You've had to put yourself above and also drive pretty hard, as we'll talk about later in this conversation. Where have you gained the confidence to do that? And how do you try and show that to others that are wanting to step forward as well?
I have, it goes right back to my roots. I have an amazing family, and I think determination and grit is something that I have a lot of pride in. It doesn't mean anything's easy, but I don't mind working hard. And also I have 2 older brothers, and, I can take care of myself. I've always had to. And they've been great supports to me, but also there's a determination there that is, I've also seen in other people, but I think it's just I will get shit done and I'll do it well. And I'm really keen to do that. And if I mess it up, I can look at it and just be like, well, shit, that is terrible. What else could I do? What could be different? I've always been pretty good at failing. And I think that just leads to a more curiosity of how the hell do I do it better? Who do I go to, or who else is doing it? Or, so the determination, I think everybody in veterinary medicine has that quality. That's an attribute. I mean, nobody would do this ridiculous business of working with animals and people and all the things. We didn't have a high level of determination and grit. I think grit is my honestly, my favorite word, and something that I really live by. And it just means shit happens. Mostly it's good. Sometimes it's shit. What are you going to do about it? I think that's kind of how I go through it. And that's been in my family. I had a great start in that regard, and you
carried it forward.
You just do it, man.
Excellent. Now, you made a direct comment there. Always pretty good at failing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people within veterinary medicine because of the structure of both the competition to get into the different fields, as well as that feeling that if I fail, I have done wrong for that animal, which is sometimes true.
Yeah.
I've done wrong to myself and the education and all those pieces, and we get down on ourselves. How have you built this up within yourself? And how do you, as a mentor, leader, teacher, put that onto others or help others during their times of difficulty? And this, again, goes back to our further conversation around communication, because that's an important piece that a lot of people are struggling with right now in veterinary medicine. Yeah,
for sure. I just see failure as such an opportunity to learn. And the reality is it's a reality, and having taught for many, many years, I tried to count. I literally have interacted with well over 1,000 students in my career. And what I really appreciate is when, it's very easy to teach people that know how to do it well and don't know how to fail, because they never fail. So you're just like, you're kind of there like, oh, that's good. But the people that struggle, they have to really figure it out. And to me, when you screw it up a little bit, it really, the evaluative, and I think be evaluative, not critical. The evaluative part is like, what the hell just happened there? Why? What am I going to do about it now, next day, the day after, whatever? And again, I go back to just being inspired by people that I saw do it early in my career. Some of the, I worked with Dr. Dwayne Landels, who's been inspirational and instrumental in so many things. I mean, literally remember going out on calls with him, and he's like, pull out that textbook from behind the seat. We got to read up on this thing. And he was a highly, very achieved veterinarian. And I'd be like, oh, shit, we're pulling out the book. Like, God, we're reading as we're driving to this call. Oh God, but it was like, we're trying it. And so the failing part to me, I also think life would be very, very boring if we just were good at everything all the time. I don't know. I'm not a boring person, and I don't like to be around boring people. So I think that, if you can screw it up and kind of celebrate it a little bit, like there's lots to that. I think it's good news. Awesome. People that don't fail aren't very exciting, I don't think.
Missing out on some pieces and growth opportunities. And that failure, we've talked about this on this podcast in terms of our own errors, both within veterinary medicine and outside of it. And how much, Mike, have we discussed in those failures, our opportunity to then learn, and how much further we are as a result of them, without a doubt.
I think the other piece, though, to me, that's really important there, Jonathan, is the fact that when I fail, it's okay for me to feel shitty about it. Like, let's agree that failing doesn't actually, like, there's a reward to it, but in the moment, it doesn't feel good. I mean, nobody likes to lose. Nobody, and same as, this concept of, well, there should be some people that are winning, like there should be all that spectrum, but I think it's okay to say to ourselves, that didn't feel good. I'm miserable about that because, and that really, in the communication realm, when I started learning about what empathy actually is, and I started using that on myself, which is self-empathy, I feel this way because of that. Like, I feel like shit because I failed that because I thought I was going to do it right. So I go beyond like, oh, it's a terrible feeling I fail. I'm like, this is what I actually feel about it. And this is why I feel this way. And then pretty soon I can just acknowledge how I feel. It's not like, oh, I feel like crappy about it. Oh, you shouldn't feel crappy about it. You should always feel happy. It's not about that. It's about accepting the fact that it doesn't feel good in the moment, but there's a reward there. And once I diminish the ugly feeling, now I can think about it. And that's when the learning actually happens.
Learning opportunity. I'm going to take this one step forward because we love to get tactical in this podcast when possible.
Sure.
How do you take that the next step? Where do you go with that? And are you doing that internally with your head? Are you recommending for individuals to take that step back? This is difficult. I'm speaking to the choir here. I don't do well with this. What do you do?
With what, the self-empathy part, or the just like
the taking the time to be self-empathetic to then be able to move next steps forward?
And I'll jump in. I'm so curious about, what is that process? So let's, at work at 4:30, something horrible happens, huge failure. What is the timeline? Like, is this a 5-minute thing? Is that the following evening? What does that look like?
Okay, so good question. First, it only took me about 20 years and some pretty high level learning and practicing to do that as fast and as process as quickly as I can. It doesn't always work. It doesn't mean like something bad happens and then I'm skipping down the hallway and everything's sunshine and roses. So in the communication training, when I started really taking a deep dive into it, even before taking the master's program, was really thinking about what is this empathy? And it's not enough to say like, oh, there, Mike, it's okay. The way we practice it is to really increase our emotional vocabulary. So if I were to ask you right now, how many emotion words could you pull out of your hat right now? How many do you think you could come up with? Either of you? Yes.
15, 20, maybe.
What about you, Mike? If I said, give me all the emotion words that you could come up with right now, how many do you think you'd come up with?
I was going to say a few less, like I kind of froze a bit there. I was like, I don't know, 10, but I'm sure if we really sat down, we'd get more. But
so if I just said off the cuff, how many could you come up with? It's generally about like 5 to 10, sad, mad, glad, happy, frustrated, worried. Like there's a few key ones that we use. And when you get into the neuroscience of emotion, there's primary ones and sideline ones, but the bottom line is increase your emotional vocabulary. So, because it's not enough just to say, oh, I'm really upset about that. Because upset to me is like, that's a word makes me gag. What does that mean? Of course I'm upset. So it's about learning some emotional vocabulary. Like, I'm devastated by this. I am in despair. I am like over the freaking moon. I'm overjoyed about this. Like, not just like, oh, that was a really good thing. Like, I try to not be lame-o in my own mind. So where did that start? Was in communication training, learning about empathy, learning about empathic statements, and actually being put in scenarios where I was coached through it, where I would be sitting there. And I remember one of the early times I did that, Cindy Adams, who is my mentor and someone I admire. Jane Takahashi is another person I love and admire and as my mentor in the communication realm. Being coached through scenarios where somebody say, well, what could you say to yourself right now? What would you say to this person? So when do I do it, Mike? All the time. And the challenge when I'm coaching people on emotional intelligence, for example, or I'm doing communication skills training, is to say, you should practice self-empathy like 75 times a day. That's how you're going to get good at it. Like, don't practice it when you're overwhelmed with a feeling. Don't practice it when you're hurting and when you're shut right down. It's about practicing it 75 times a day, every time. And like when you're in the grocery store, I feel pretty content right now. I'm very relaxed because I really like getting groceries and I can't wait to get home and eat this ice cream. I feel this way because 75 times a day, that's how you get good at it. And when I started was, in the learning spectrum of like, you sort of first you're kind of ignorant and then you kind of like become awkwardly aware that you don't know something. You're like, oh God, I'm really bad at this. And then you like think about it all the time and then you're highly sensitive to it all the time. Then it starts becoming part of your routine and then you become skilled at it, and that's like any other skill development that you do. it's awkward and clunky at first, and then you get better at it the more practice you have. So I don't know if that entirely answers your question, Mike. So sometimes it takes me 1 minute. Sometimes if it's something that's really has a huge emotional impact for me, I have to really think, and it takes me longer, and I have to repeatedly go back and think, I'm feeling this way because, I'm feeling this way because, and not to change how I feel about it, to acknowledge it. That's been a big help.
It's a big piece right there too.
That's a learned, coached thing.
And how do you, can we dive in further? How do you accept the emotion, right? Without placing judgment on it or feeling like shame about how you feel.
Yep. If I'm feeling ashamed, I also acknowledge that, right? Shame, and I know you guys have heard of Brené Brown. I mean, the work that she's done in shame and vulnerability is amazing. And I heard one of her podcasts where she was talking about, that concept, and is like, I am bad or I did something bad, very different things, right? So if I did something, and I put in quotes bad, I'm not talking about criminal, I'm talking about something subpar happened in my life. Then I acknowledge I didn't like that. This is how I'm feeling about it. This is why. And if shame is one of the things, I can say that to myself, like, I'm really ashamed of how I did that. And I accept it, because that's what I know. I mean, that's the neuroscience, again, we're, talking a little tiny way here about this, but that's the, naming your emotion, thinking about it, thinking about why. And then when you do that, it kind of diminishes the super intensity of it. So you can kind of think a bit more clearly. And it's when we can think more clearly that I engage with that part of myself that's insatiably curious, which is innate in every veterinary professional as well. They're all weirdly curious people in the veterinary profession. And then I think, okay, why? I'm the ultimate whyer. Like, why did that happen? Why do I feel that way? Why da 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 da. And so that's sort of the, if I were to say a process, that would kind of be, I name it, I think about it, I think about why, then I sort of allow that to settle so that I can think. Because when I'm emotional, I'm not thinking.
Yep.
Animals are the same. This is the whole principle of low stress handling and fear free is if they're in a fear state, anxious, fear, anxiety, or stress, FAS is what they call it in fear free, they can learn how to step on the scale. Same. And I saw that in students for years. If I made it too overwhelming or they were overcome with an emotional inhibition, it didn't matter how beautiful an instructor I was, they were incapable of learning. And so then it was up to me to acknowledge them. This is super frustrating. This is very, very hard. I had one student, we were doing a sheep lab and we were trying to collect blood from a sheep, they're very fuzzy. And she was very I've never wanted to cause discomfort or pain, like all of us, want to be in that realm of never causing. And we were doing it. She could not hit the vein. She could not hit the vein. And she was starting to tear up. And she says, the sheep is vocalizing, the ewe was, and she says, this is hurting them. And I tried to say, no, it's not. And then I was like, really, Becky? And I finally said to her, I said, yes, this is causing the sheep discomfort and feels like shit. Now, what can we do now? And then she was like, literally, she was in that panic. You can see the moment when it lands. And she looked at me and she said, okay, thank you for agreeing that this is not good. I said, no problem. I mean, it wasn't awful. We have to do that learning, but then she could process and then we could think, okay, how can we make this better for you, for her? Okay, we're going to do this. You're going to think, you're going to study, you're going to aim, you're going to go. And then she did it, no problem. So, but if I had just said, no, they're there, it isn't really comfortable, quit worrying about it, like that doesn't work. It's like somebody saying, hey, could you stop having your feelings right now? Like you would want to punch them in the throat. Somebody say that to you, like, hey, don't be pissed off. Well, just telling me that, it's not helping. Throat punch. That's what I'm thinking when somebody says that to me.
Just on a daily basis, Becky pulls these out, throat punches when we're working together. This is not specific to the podcast today. That's great. I need to turn the conversation a little bit because we have another big topic that I want to ensure that we hit on in some detail in this short conversation that we have together today, is around your career and advocacy to RVTs in the veterinary place.
Yeah, love it. Favorite
We
topic.
are in you and I have debated and gone back and forth, and there's places where we have to agree to disagree, discussing veterinary shortages. Tell me, Becky, from your perspective, what it looks like around RVTs and their current usage in veterinary medicine from Becky Taylor's perspective.
Sure. So thing number one, the narrative around not utilizing RVTs. I am very tired of that. I've decided I won't use that term anymore. I'm not going to use underutilized or utilized. It annoys the hell out of me because I feel like, I'm going to utilize this pen. This is a tool. I'm going to utilize my phone as a tool. I'm going to utilize this screwdriver. I'm not a tool. I don't think anyone and I'm tired of that narrative around underutilized. Read a magazine from the 70s in veterinary medicine. It says RVTs are underutilized. Like, it's time to stop saying that. So the term that I'm using and thinking lots about is the term of mobilizing, which is bring ready to action. And so I want to mobilize RVTs that are ready to do that. And I'm thinking of veterinarians, and I admire veterinarians still 30 years in. I look at the work veterinarians do, and I am in awe. And I still have that feeling in me of wow, the things you can do. And so, we need to provide support. That is the ultimate role of an RVT, is to provide support to the veterinarians so they can do what they do. It's that skills-based approach, or strengths-based approach. Everybody's doing shit that they're good at all the time. So, in that concept of mobilizing RVTs, I really think that right now there's a couple of different ways. One way that we're already knocking it out of the park is with AnimalHealth Link. You are aware of that company, obviously, Jonathan. And
yes, but for our listeners, which are, we've got quite a vast amount over multiple countries, and just as conflict, we are, you're a partner in AnimalHealth Link. I am a partner in AnimalHealth Link, so there is conflict there, but we are conflict of interest, but well worthwhile to discuss.
So, that's an example of mobilizing RVTs, and people should just look it up. So that is where RVTs are actively relieving the burden of consistently chatting with clients. Veterinarians need to chat with clients. I'm not saying let's make it so veterinarians never talk to clients. RVTs need to start participating more actively in engaging with clients. The one thing that is, controversial, with Jonathan and I have talked lots about, is even around the simple things of administering vaccines to well patients. So to me, RVTs can start seeing clients, but we can't just say, I want to utilize, again, using that term, I want to utilize my RVTs more. Hey, why don't you guys start going and seeing appointments? They don't have the level of education and training in the dialogue skills that are needed in discussing money and doing all those kind of things that you need to when you're in front of a client and you're managing that whole interaction, which veterinarians are very familiar with. Of course you are. It's, hi, I'm Dr. Light, to please do these things and everything in between. So RVTs can learn those skills, and they need to. And so one very simple thing that I think we could be doing is actually seeing well vaccine appointments. I've joked with lots of people that honestly, dogs and cats are the only species that actually get a vaccine by a doctor, like our own human babies. They don't see a doctor to get their vaccine. We're in a public health office. They're not. And I'm not saying we eliminate if there's a problem, but these well patients that are coming in for boosters, for annual wellness, RVTs can talk to them about all the things that they know about: lifestyle, nutrition, behavior, safe behavior at home. I'm not talking about problems or diagnosing or needing a therapeutic diet or needing a behavioral intervention. We can say, and we can train our RVTs to say, hey, how's it going with Rufus there? What do you guys do with Rufus? All the things that veterinarians should be doing currently do not have time to do. And so RVTs can be doing those appointments and adding such value for the client because they are spending time with a veterinary professional. Yep. Of course, if I'm doing an assessment physical and I see there's a lump, a bump, an abnormality, all I need to do, which is what RVTs do all the time, is, this is not normal. You need to see Dr. Light or Dr. Bug. The end. I'm going to book you an appointment here, here, here. Then and you can continue on from there. Sorry, go ahead.
Where do you see that helping the profession, and how do you counter those that would say that that is in the realm of only the veterinarians, and there is the potential for just the slippery slope of where do we go to veterinarians being less and less involved in the direct physical care of that animal?
Well, so to veterinarians and RVTs that aren't interested in, I don't want to talk to you. There's already enough people that are interested in doing something about this. And because the other narrative that's going on, as you guys know, is that this profession is unwell, that the job is miserable, there's toxic teams, the clients are making too many demands. And if we want to do something, there are RVTs out there that are ready for this. Is this for every single RVT? Of course not. It needs to be someone that's confident, that is willing to take risks. And the slippery slope that you mentioned, it is veterinary medicine is a freaking slippery slope. So if I can be entrusted to monitor anesthesia while an animal's heart is beating, while a veterinarian is cracking open their rib cage or opening their abdomen, but I can't be trusted to it's not even a trust thing. It's, I can do this where I can interact with a client. I can provide excellent patient care, which is what RVTs do in their sleep. And the client gets a good experience. They're very bonded to the practice. And then they're going to come back when they have a problem, not when the problem is so far along that they've been embarrassed or they feel ashamed. Clients feel shame a lot. They're embarrassed that they have to phone. They feel bad. They don't want to. Sometimes that emerges as bad behavior, as we know. But there's a stress level there. So I think there's RVTs that are ready for it. There's veterinarians that are already embracing it and seeing it as a revenue generator, as a way for RVTs that want the challenge and say, like, I want to interact with people. I want to interact with clients, and I want to help develop a better bond to this practice and provide really great care for the patient. That's thing number one. I haven't met an RVT on the planet of Earth yet that says my number one thing is not patient care. And my mantra, my saying in life is the way to good patient care and better animal welfare is to work with the people that own them. That's it. And the way we do that is with good communication skills. That's it. It's simple. I mean, good medical knowledge, but we all have that with our degree, our certificate, our diploma. Yeah.
Two pieces to that. And the first one is, how does a veterinary clinic and a veterinary owner who is struggling with the day-to-day pieces in veterinary medicine, over the top busy, doesn't have the people they need on board, maybe there is some equipment issues, financial, all those other pieces that come on board, how do they get started how do they get started?
Well, they have to agree that they want to make change, right? So doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome is the definition of a fool, right? And so and it's very hard. Like, I feel for these veterinary professionals that are in the grind and they just feel like they're busting their ass every day. And at the end of the day, they're exhausted. The dealing with clients exhausts them. They're feeling exhausted. They don't have very good self-empathy practice, all the things, related around wellness and care. And so there has to be, from the leaders of that practice, whether it's the veterinarians, the owner, the corporate, whoever it is, that have to say, we are going to change. Let's all agree change is going to be super awkward. It's probably going to make us angry. It's going to frustrate us, but we have to agree there's a path we're going to take. Then when we say, okay, one of the things we want to do, which I wish many veterinarian clinics will do, and I hope they will when we introduce this program, is they'll say, you know what, one of the changes that we can make, we're going to relieve some of the appointment burden from veterinarians. We're going to engage our RVTs and mobilize them and get them going. Maybe that means hiring another TA, all that. And I think the veterinary community also, again, I never do anything without a communication lens, could really benefit from some education and training on how to behave on a team. Not everybody knows that. And of course, that stems around dialogue.
So that last point, and unfortunately, we're getting so short of time. How do you do that, Becky? You and I both know you go into many, many clinics that are completely, from the standpoint of the one end of the spectrum, toxic. You can't even have that conversation, to the second point, more in the middle, which is the majority of those that I've worked with. They don't know where to go.
So who doesn't know where to go?
The team. They know they have issues, but they don't know how to address them and proactively move them forward to this betterment that can be a great work environment.
Yes. So here's my challenge to, I hope, every veterinary leader that's listening to me right now, is get your shit together and make a change. And decide with your team that you're going to do that. If the leadership, whatever that title means, owner, corporate, boss, supervisor, manager, whatever it is, and you have to be ready to screw up. You have to be ready to be awkward. You have to be a little bit vulnerable, and you have to be ready to try something and start talking to people that are already doing it. This isn't novel, as you know. There are practices that are knocking this out of the park. And here's what I'm seeing now with practices that are knocking out of the park. They're almost embarrassed to say they're doing well because so many of their colleagues aren't. I'm like, what in the F is that about? Like, why aren't we celebrating these teams that are rocking it? And so that's my challenge to the leaders, the people that are influenced, the influencers, the thought leaders in the practice. This is up to you to make a difference and say, we got to do some stuff. We need to invest time, money, and resources into making a change. And we got to be able to look each other in the eye and say, this is probably going to get ugly. How are we going to behave when it gets ugly? Like, how are we going to behave, like you and I, Jonathan? How are we going to behave when we don't agree with each other? Yep. Like, should we just hate each other and talk about each other behind our back? No, we don't do that. We I don't like that. You don't like that. Why? Okay. It becomes problem solving, not a big emotional wreck, and where people are taking those burdens home and packing those burdens around. It's too much. I mean, that's what's caving us in right now, I think. This is a solution, I believe.
Excellent. And that's what we're about on this podcast. Mike, anything to add to that? This is a big piece of...
Yeah. Like listening to this, Becky, how do you get people to step into that? On the communication piece, one of the biggest problems I saw was just avoiding it, right? Yeah. Like, to use the you and Jonathan example, if you think there's going to be a level of conflict, we'll just avoid the conversation entirely.
Yeah. And that is the most common path for people. And when I ask people, how do you deal with conflict? That is the most common response, is I avoid it. So again, it's about taking on some education. It's about learning about conflict, what it is and what it ain't, and how to skillfully navigate it. And through dialogue skills, that's what we do. You take these skills, you learn them, you build them, you practice, you screw them up, you get better, you get better, you get better, so that pretty soon conflict is like something that you're excited about. And change, frankly, is conflict. That's why people like to avoid it. And they're like, and so it just is really that culture of like, we're going to do some stuff, probably going to be ugly. This is how we're going to behave. Let's talk about how wonderful conflict is, because to me it is. And medicine is based in conflict. We'd never progress if somebody didn't say, hey, person, procedure, or thing, that's not right. I don't think that's right. I mean, the whole concept of animal welfare is based on the greatest conflicts, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we went from a time of, doing vivisection on animals because people thought they were machines. Like, what the hell? So somebody had to look around and be like, I think maybe they feel that. I think they're like sentient beings. We should look at that. And the outrage. But if we didn't have conflict and we didn't have people trying to do some change, God, we'd still be dragging our knuckles, right? And packing a club. I mean, that's how we, we have that ability to think and conflict and challenge. And to me, that's exciting. That's what we need to do. So what do the teams need to do? They need to agree to get ugly. That's what it is.
Well, Becky, I think this might not be the conclusion. We might need to take this into a part 2, into some further discussions, because if there's a place that veterinary medicine needs to progress, it's exactly this point that we've just finished on. And we see that every day within our veterinary teams, unfortunately. And it is, I think, based on that lack of skill, that lack of how to take those conversations that we all want to have forward. And that does take learning. So if there's an ability to have you back on behalf of BS Communication Strategies for our listeners, I think that would be well worthwhile.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the good news is about the comment that you made is like, I just want to say to veterinary professionals, like, you're so, we already know how to do skills. We already know how to think. We already know how to engage and debate and be weirdly curious. And so we already have all these attributes and things in us that it's just finding a way to get that skill learning, right? And if you want to learn more about soccer, you don't go to the mall into a retail store and ask somebody to teach you, right? You find somebody that will help you develop those skills. And I mean, veterinary professionals are rock stars at skill building. I mean, it's something they already do well.
Excellent. Well, with that, we are going to change course and we are going to go into our Q&A session. And in our Q&A session, we have a number of short questions, which you can answer at any area you would like. And our first question is, from the first start, are you a cat or a dog person?
Well, I'm a horse person, but if I had to choose dog or cat all the way, 100%.
I was scared there for a little bit. I know the plethora of animals you have at the farm, and I was worried that you might go the dog route.
I could be that kind of cat lady in my senior years. That might be me.
True or false? I knew I wanted to be in the animal profession since I was a kid.
True.
Definitely.
100%. Day one, I think.
How would your friends describe what you do for a living?
They'd use the most common phrase I use, which is she's a communication nerd, but we don't kind of really know exactly what it is, depending on who you're talking to. But they would say something about communication and being a nerd. That's what they would say, I think.
What is your favorite hobby?
Obviously, horseback riding. You know, I'm a horsewoman in my soul. That's where I spend my spare time.
To the point that you're going to be off the grid for a full week next week again.
Yeah, out in the mountains. Yes, loving it.
What in this world are you most grateful for?
Always my family. I have a great family, extended family. My husband and my kids are amazing. So that's always like, that's kind of almost like a given. But I am most grateful, sincerely, for the people in this profession, outside of family being number one. I am very, very inspired by people all the time. And I just love admiring people. But there's so much to admire. And in this profession, like, it's just an endless chain of admirable people that are just interesting and fun and smart and capable. And they just, you know, when we share this common interest of like, let's do cool stuff with animals. 'Cause at the root of me, that's, you know, that's my heart place, is caring for animals.
Excellent. So with that, we are coming to a close, Becky. Thank you very much for coming and joining Mike and I today. As I expected, we are over time, and we really have only, I think, skimmed the surface of all the Beckyisms that are available to be shared with the world. So thank you very much for coming on with us.
I am very, very glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share some laughs and to have great conversation. I really always appreciate that, for sure.
Excellent. Mike, any words in close?
Just wow. Jonathan talks about you frequently, Becky, and I was looking forward to meeting you and having you on the podcast. And this was amazing. I have pages of notes, and I like the Beckyisms. I'm going to steal the throat punch. That's how I'll keep Jonathan in line on the podcast.
Why not? Just getting throat punches from a different direction. Let's keep them coming.
Love it.
Excellent. Becky, if and when our listeners, viewers want to reach out to you, what is the best way of getting a hold of you?
So right now on my website, which is bscommunication.ca. So that's where we are on the web. We have an Instagram account and Facebook at 2comnerds, at the number 2comnerds. Or you can just reach out to me directly to comnerds@gmail.com, which is the easiest way to reach me. But off the website, there's a, contact me form, or on either of the social media pages is great as well. Happy to hear from anyone.
Fantastic. And for those that are listening, we will include that in our show notes. And with that, we come to the end of our podcast. And with all of our guests, the last message is left to you. What message do you want to leave for the veterinary community?
I would love to say to this veterinary community that we need to be joyful. We are joyful. We get to do this amazing work every day. And this is our only life, and we just need to rock the shit out of it. That's what I think.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap, on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly. So be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to the veterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to the veterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.